Fantastic. And with this, we're going to go over to our first panel of the second part. And before I will pass it on to Amandine to introduce our two fantastic panelists for today. For this session, we have the topic of scale-up gigafactories in Europe. And it's definitely, a lot of us are based in Europe. So I think we're all wondering about that topic. What does scale look like in Europe? Where is it going? And what are some of these actors, such as 11S and Freya, doing to scale up their side? So yeah, with this, I will pass on to Amandine to introduce the two speakers for today.
Thank you so much, Simon. And looking forward to this panel. Let me welcome to the stage Nemanja Mikac, who is the founder and the CEO of 11S. Nemanja studied at Imperial College in London, where he completed his Master of Science in Advanced Chemical Engineering, and he has over 10 years of experience in aluminum converting, food and pharma packaging business. 11S is the first European LFP large battery cell manufacturer with plans to build several gigafactories in Europe. His main goal is to effectively empower people to explore the unknown, envision new possibilities, and make ecological decisions. Very nice to have you with us, Nemanja. Next, I'd like to welcome Hege Marie Norheim, who is the Executive Vice President, Corporate Public Affairs and Sustainability of Freyr. She previously served as Freyr's Battery Executive VP, Human Resources, Sustainability and Communications. Prior to joining Freyr, Ms. Norheim was with Spencer Stuart and held executive roles at Norsk Hydro and Equinor, serving as Chief Sustainability Officer and as VP Reserves and Field Development. She was previously Senior Advisor in the Office of the Prime Minister of Norway and State Secretary to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance between 1994 and 2011. She currently serves also as the Deputy Chair on the Board of Directors of the not-for-profit Norwegian Refugee Council. Very, very a warm welcome to both of you. It's great to have you both, and we look forward to this discussion.
Fantastic.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much, Amandine, and very good to see you again. And with this, let's get started. So I'm sure there are going to be quite a few questions also from the chat, so please already start filling them in so we have enough time to address them. But before we do that, I would love to have our both great panelists to quickly introduce themselves, maybe also, a bit of what they're working on, maybe also their organization, their company, and we go from there. So maybe, Hege, would you like to start?
I'm very happy to start, and thank you for having me and Freyr as part of the panel. I assume Freyr is a little bit unknown for many of the listeners today, so let me just give you a brief introduction. We are a company that was founded in Norway 4 years ago. We looked at Northvolt in Sweden and said, hey, this can be done even better by Norwegians. And a group of former executives from the Norwegian process industry of aluminium founded Freyr. We found a partner in technology in the US, so we will be producing battery cells based on an American technology from 24M. And we found a location in Norway which had surplus renewable energy based on hydropower, which is a key, we think, and we can talk more about it in this panel, a key for the battery industry going forward, that we actually base it on the use of renewable energy so that the footprint of the batteries themselves is also green. We then listed on the New York Stock Exchange in July last year, raised $700 million of capital in that context, and are now being traded on the New York Stock Exchange. We went from, I was number 20, who was hired in March last year, and we are now more than 300 on our way to our estimates is 5,000 in 2025. We have been granted guarantees and loans from the Norwegian government and have a board who has sanctioned the building of our first gigafactory. So this is it will start this year being built and will be producing in 2024. And interestingly enough, we are also, as Nemanja, producing LFP batteries. So we will be the second then, or first. We will have to compete about that to produce that in Europe. And we have our main market focus will be the power market in the US first, but also hopefully a growing market for storage capacity in Europe, which there absolutely should be. So We have already, so our Gigafactory that we are planning to start building this year will have a capacity, a nameplate capacity of 29 gigawatt hours of battery. We will be producing 2 batteries per second when we get going. So that's huge. It's 11. They told me it is the size of 11 Wimbledon pitches next to each other. So these are huge things, and it will be the first of 2 gigafactories in Mo i Rana in Norway. We have also secured a location in Finland, in Vasa, where we are currently doing environmental studies, and we have joined a joint venture with Koch Industries in the US, and we'll be announcing our location for a gigafactory there this fall. And we are one of many, which is fantastic. The world needs a lot of batteries, and I look forward to discussing this enormous scaling of the industry, which is not enough, and it's not happening fast enough. And unfortunately, many will fail, but many will also succeed. So looking forward to that discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for this introduction, Hege. And now, Nemanja.
Hi, everybody. Well, good comment on the first. Well, there will be an announcement on Monday, and I'm on a conference on Tuesday. So on Wednesday, the first samples will be live. We actually produced them, so the LFP large prismatic cells. So the first ones are out, but the pilot scale production will start somewhere in March. So I think we have similar timelines as well. But anyway, there are differences. We'll talk about that as well. Just a few words about the intro about 11Es. So yeah, we have started this project in 2019 with a lot of people with a lot of coating, mixing, drying, and calendering experience. And then we realized, hey, this is kind of similar to batteries, and we could do something there. And after 2 years of research and building a lab and actually operating a lab, so we are already for 1.5 years running a lab, made 500 different samples of LFP in coin and pouch. And this is already being evaluated by some customers as well, but it's a chemistry testing in a way. And then we're basically scaling to a mini pilot scale, which will be operational from January. We're finishing construction now. And after that, we have plans for bigger plants. So the next one will be already start of construction next year, end of construction in Q1 2024, and the Gigafactory will be in 2025. So there are multiple steps already there, but essentially, in a nutshell, we're going to produce LFP large prismatic cells for electric vehicles, for energy storage systems, and for commercial applications as well, like bus, truck, and yellow machines. So this is in a nutshell what we do. We're located in the very north of Serbia. This is where the first plant is. We have a very specific situation in the raw material value chain. We have a lot happening in Hungary and in northern Serbia. So in that sense, we're also one of the first one to secure the supply chain of the cathode active materials and resources for it in the neighborhood. So there are many things happening in a good way. But all in all, I'm happy to be here to talk about scale up and talk about discussions. So about the difficulties in scale up and general challenges of the market and how big Europe is and actually will be. I guess this is the most of the interest of the participants. So let's go into the deep dive.
Fantastic. Also, thank you so much, Nemanja. And very good to see you again, of course, as a Battery MBA alumni as well as past Battery MBA lecturer. So good to have you in this regards as well. Fantastic. Okay. I mean, there's a bunch of different topics, and I'm sure, we could speak for hours, but I think maybe I start on one because I think it's also quite unique in some way to both of you. We spoke about this already in the prep about LFP. Why are we doing LFP now, right? So everyone else is doing NMC, and you two are on the LFP train. We already spoke a bit about this in the morning session about the Asia kind of perspective and how this also really pushed LFP maybe into the market. But I would just be curious, maybe from both of your sides, kind of how did you come up with this LFP strategy rather than also doing a mix like NMC, etc.
Ladies first again. All right. Okay. I go. Okay. So yeah, in 2019, it wasn't that obvious, but right now it is. Actually, by the newest Bloomberg predictions, it's already 40% will be actually LFP. So it's not an unknown thing. But in a nutshell, what happened is LFP was always kind of not that great in range, therefore energy density, what many participants know what I mean. So it wasn't looked at as a future technology in a serious way, and it was mainly produced in China, and it was kind of a closed system there. But then a few innovations happened, and this technology to prove it has a lot of advantages, which are now obvious, being the longer cycle life, which is 2 to 3 times. It's a lot, and if you're a company calculating total cost of ownership, that's quite important. Talking to you energy storage people and bus and truck people. And a passenger car, it's a bit different. Then you have a more sustainable approach because you don't depend on cobalt and nickel production. Also, the cost is actually a bit lower. It even uses less lithium per kilowatt hour. So all this led together with the cell to pack concept, because they're intrinsically safer due to the nature of the chemistry, let's put it like that. So you can make big cells. And when you can make big cells, you can avoid modules. When you can avoid modules, you basically have 200 big cells and you have your pack in a typical EV. Therefore, the energy density on a pack level is actually similar to NMC, sometimes a bit lower, sometimes a bit higher, depends on the approach. Therefore, it makes all the sense in the world to use it for entry-level vehicles, to use it for energy storage, because there you don't care so much about the energy density in most applications. So it's very useful there. And since FREYR is mainly dealing with energy storage, as far as I understand, Hege-Marie will correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a perfect combination because you get the advantages of the lifetime expectancy of the cost, therefore total cost of ownership, and also you don't need that energy density so much. So this is why LFP, we'll probably see more players switching. The thing is, you can't really easily switch. So when you have to kind of build another line. So that's why we will see NMC will still be 60%. I mean, that's okay. And many of the Gigafactories will serve this premium market. And Europe kind of started with the premium market because this was easier to tackle. And LFP, we will see more on the mass market vehicles and city buses and balancing of the grid.
Yeah, I think Nemanja just really covered that from A to Z. I just want to add that, and as Nemanja said, this is not either or, but it's definitely also an LFP opportunity growing, and we will be doing both over time. We will certainly be doing LFP for the storage market, and power market, but also for cars and trucks, and then we will be looking for opportunities to do NMC as well. I think one main reason for why we have started out with LFP is exactly because the power market and the customers in the power market requires less and is less of an entry barrier into the market for a new producer of battery cells. They have less lead time, they require fewer samples, they move faster. While working with an automotive producer, you need to calculate 2-3 years before you can set something into giga production, and these are huge capital investments. So in order to get that revenue going, in order to defend these huge investments in factories, the ESS market is a much better entrance market basically, and so LFP suits us very well there. And the 24M technology also happens to be better suited for LFP and for at least for ESS currently. So 24M is a next generation technology which produces the same lithium-ion batteries, but has taken the production process down from 15 steps of the conventional technology or production technology, from 15 steps down to 5. And we will produce what we call semi-solid batteries. So the LFP batteries we are producing with the 24M technology from the US are semi-solid and don't use a binder, and will be also easier to recycle in the end. So this is also, I think, has been an important part for us to be part of this next generation production technology.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for covering that and also giving a bit of the history with LFP, some of the development, because I'm sure also I can see in the chat some people might be, found the video well explained, but also find maybe a bit surprising to see some of the uprights there. And then we talk about scale, right? And I think there's a couple of different topics we can address. And you already mentioned that we talk about size. These buildings tend to be massive, like just from a footprint. We're also talking about lots of people, right? Like, thousands of people, like little villages or cities. You have to essentially bring together to make a gigafactory like this work. And I think you mentioned this, Helge, right? Like also from you talking 20 to 300, which is a massive growth already. But then you want to talk to 5,000 in 2025, which is not too far away. And of course, you're not the only one who wants them. Probably Nemanja also wants some of these people maybe for his gigafactory. So there's also maybe the crunch of talent. Of course, also something we are quite close to with Battery Associates and Battery MBA, but also, also we have these career sessions, etc. with Events Search. They can also talk about that. It's the talent everyone wants. So maybe just kind of get a bit of your strategies, how to do that. Maybe also regional, because it's quite interesting that we have you in Norway and we have you in Serbia, and maybe we're going to talk a bit later about some of these other regions. Maybe not the most obvious choices for some people to move there to be in this industry. So maybe just how to address some of these scale-up challenges would be great to hear.
You have to pick one, because we're always going to say who's going to.
It's always alternating.
Let me start then on that one. So obviously a huge challenge. And to add to that challenge for Freyr, we have decided, as I said, to build our first gigafactories in an area with surplus renewable energy, which is far in the north. So we're actually, and there's absolutely no surplus people there or competence. So we are planning on finding and moving 1,500 families, employees with families, under the Arctic Circle, where there is no sun for months in the year. So this is, we have decided to really take it on. The competence, we do believe that there is a lot of competence in industries that are in the transition on the other side of history. So, and this is very visible in Norway, being an oil and gas industry with a lot of competence within in relevant sciences. So one of our main strategies is that conversion of competence from the oil and gas industry to our industry. We will be building a Freyr Academy together with the government and with the local municipalities and universities and global as well, to do that transition of competencies and training into battery cell production. And that also requires sort of a base of competence that we are looking and seeking to hire. And we've been very lucky to find some key people from areas that have been producing battery cells, mainly in Asia already. They have, however, moved to Oslo, and not so many of them to Mo i Rana yet in the Arctic Circle. But a very interesting and multi-diverse and a multicultural environment. But clearly, we have actually, we are going to recruit from all of Europe as well. We have tailored our strategy for that to certain countries where we believe there is battery cell manufacturing competence, but also an ability or mobility amongst the workforce. And historically, we know that people from certain countries are willing to move and are successful in moving. So we would like to have people who would like to stay in the Arctic Circle and enjoy it there. So that's we put a lot of investment into thinking about who they are and how to attract them. And of course, being a listed company, we are certainly going to use the opportunity to give people options and be part of a financially very interesting proposition as well as we scale and are traded on the New York Stock Exchange.
Well, you covered it quite well, but yeah, the human capital challenge is quite vast, and this is why we decided, well, almost 2 years ago now, to build the lab, so we can actually also train people there and do research before we even start construction of any pilot. And this proved to be perfect also for research and for training new people. I think we already passed 15 nationality landmark, so it is a bit international. We are kind of in the middle of Europe, if I can say it like that in a broad way. So it's quite warm in summer, quite cold in winter, but it's okay. So those things are fine. But yeah, there's a huge challenge, and we're working on it daily. And one of the probably top 3 reasons why gigafactories are delayed, not failed, but delayed, are due to lack of staff in key areas. And this is when we analyze it, was one of the top 3 factors. Competence is being the number 1. You can hire 1,000 people, but if you don't have the competence, it's going to be quite a challenge. So to retrain and to do all that, it takes quite a bit of time. So definitely, if you're planning to be in the battery value chain, you're going to have some issues one way or the other to find enough human capital. But that's not the only one. So, I mean, we can talk about other challenges if that's the question, but Simon, I'll let you regulate this one.
Perfect. No, thanks so much. You're doing a great transition, and yeah, we're definitely gonna watch your efforts and training, etc., very closely, and see how we maybe can support you on this as well. But yeah, I think other challenge, another one also which comes up a lot is of course scrap rate and quality, and things like this. Especially if you introduce new processes, you might not have as much history in these production processes. So maybe you can also share a bit on this, like how to go around that.
I can see that Nemanja, you are planning to have a scrap recycling facility at your site. Is that right?
Yeah,
talk about it?
Yeah, we're currently recycling aluminium since a few years, if not 10 already. And we're gonna also add additionally to recycle our own scrap only. So this is just one part. That's correct. But the scrap rates in Europe are huge. I mean, there's not much talk about it, and but it's huge. So we need to definitely get on top of that game. I don't want to give any names, but basically, Europe has an issue to start up, and this has been only solved by close industry experience and simply knowing what to do. I mean, a battery has more than 600 control points, so just take it in there to sync. So imagine how many steps can go wrong. And if you just have 0.1% mistake everywhere, compound that to the number and you will get huge scrap rates. So it is really critical, and it's probably the most difficult thing, apart from people getting the funds, construction, customers, everything else, is to get that productivity and scrap rates on the level you expect. Otherwise, you're out of the game. And Hage Marie said ESS is a bit more relaxed, I would say, on that end. And we're doing a couple of projects for OEMs, and we're already doing a development for SOP 2026. So you can imagine how many tests there will be so that we can start production in 2026. So it is quite a challenge and quite a long game. And Asia has gathered a lot of experience, and they really showed the way. So definitely that's going to spread to Europe, and Europe has put the gas pedal on. So the game is on, and I think also your battery associates, and I was a student back then, right? And I was also a lecturer, so it helps a lot. And I would say even more probably semi-technical lectures will be needed, and universities need to step in. But it simply takes time. So we will need time, and this will be 5-10 years. Then we'll be there, and it will be then a semi-commodity. But until 2030, it's going to be a huge struggle, and you will see many delays. So I don't know if you backtrack that thing, but you can find analysis. Even CATL announced much more, and then they did only 14 gigawatt hours in Germany. What about that? Will they do 100 in Hungary? Probably not at the beginning. So it will be a lot of these shifts and changes. I mean, we also are going to announce soon capacity expansions. But all of this is really, you have to be credible to keep it on time. None of them are.
Just, yeah, I totally agree. Massive issue. Just maybe add that we actually ran a tender process for the scrap recycling for our LFP factory, or for LFP material both for the pilot factory, which is also going to start in first quarter next year producing for us, and then for the Gigafactory. And we're not able to attract much interest from global players or international players because LFP is just so unknown. So we are also going to establish this in-house in the beginning, and then we're going to have to lift, I think, this opportunity in the market for an industry that needs to get engaged in this, where this is going to be big volumes, but it's going to take time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And you kind of already, I mean, you're doing it perfect. Like my questions, you're just leading it always into that, because the next question would have been about recycling. And of course, we don't want to do too much about it because we actually have our next panel about recycling. Mm-hmm. But now I got you two here, as you know, from two of the upcoming gigafactories in LFP space. And of course, there's a lot of debate about LFP recycling. Does it make sense? You know, it's a big challenge. from a cost perspective, looking at, we don't have our cobalt, we don't have our nickel, so you don't really have these, elements in there which actually, provide us the return when we do the recycling. So maybe if you can also, you already touched on a bit, but anything you can expand on it as well, like what's your strategy, maybe also what's your lessons learned. I think, Hege, what you just shared was really valuable to also show the challenge, right, at the moment to find a partner for that, because it's not as attractive yet. But maybe we have to do lithium recycling. Can we get there? It might be required from the European battery regulations. We might have to actually do things like that in the future. So yeah, just curious to see if you have anything you can expand on it as well.
No, I'm happy to let Nemanja comment on it. Just say from our part then that our learnings was that this is something we really need to work on technology and on the technology solutions for. So we are currently, and this is a big project between us and 24M, to really develop the technology for the recycling of the LFP and batteries, and then and they will most likely patent it as something that is a business. And I think we all agree that this is going to be a big market. So it would be good if we could have some of the international companies see that early, and of course we have a job to do to make them see that.
Yeah, recycling is very interesting now because it's so little known, and I'll try to summarize and explain. Well, first, change of perspective. So LFP lasts 2 to 3 times more. Okay, first thing. Second thing, it uses less lithium per kilowatt hour. So if you put that into perspective, you'll actually have more time to figure it out. You will have even when you figure it out, there will be less things to recycle in a sense. So if you take the total value chain of the proposal, it's actually similar to an NMC cathode, simply due to the fact that you're first using prevention and then you're using recycling. But okay, if we say eventually we have to recycle, then we're in the same boat. Right now, CATL has a recycling company called Brump, which I think it has 200,000 tons of recycling capacity, and Europe probably has, I don't know, single digits, 10,000 maybe. So we're talking, it's possible. It's just a matter of economics. And there are some ways to overcome it. Now with lithium price, now it's easy, but it will go probably again down. So we're going to see a new order in that sense. And there are many recycling companies in Europe, which are startups, big companies, a lot of things happening. But also be careful about the recycling amounts. I think it's going to be less than what is announced. Simply due to the end of life of batteries will be different. So first, there will be second lives, there will be other applications and so on. Second, not all of them will be recycled immediately because they might stay in somewhere and get, so it will all be shifted. That's the first thing. And the scrap rates will go down. So all of this together will, I'm super optimistic, of course, but it's not as amazing as it looks in the first graphs. And all the technologies are kind of spinning around the hydromet, so it's all kind of similar in that sense. And I think there'll be different business models, even like licensing, different kinds. So we're looking into that. And I also think that after the Gigafactories kind of merge or whatever, or be bigger, they will do them themselves. So a lot of the big ones will do that themselves as well. So I would say a lot of unknowns. I just shot 50 different topics already, but just for you to think about it in your back brain, it's going to be quite a wild game in recycling.
Fantastic. No, thank you so much. And I think this also gives a great, we will definitely ask this question again in the next panel on recycling. So maybe we can help you out. Maybe we find some potential partners there. But I also know we had a former participant also in the Battery MBA actually work on LFP recycling in Asia. So, and also interesting case study actually they wrote about some of the numbers. And, I think that's give a bit of background reading. So if anybody's interested, get in touch with us and we can maybe share something with you there. Great. So I think now we are about to go to some of the audience questions. But before we do, though, we want to show you one quick poll. We have one poll for each of these panels. And this is kind of, I think, maybe interesting here. We have which country in Europe will have the highest battery production capacity by 2030. And you might wonder where these countries coming from. They essentially come from what we have seen, being announced, like what are the largest player for announced capacities at this point. But of course, we also see that, Norway and Serbia are missing here. So maybe you can expand a bit on this. I'm also thinking if we probably would do this poll again and would put it on LFP production capacity, might look slightly different. But just in this case, any thoughts, any opinions on this at this point? Hege.
Okay, this looks really, credible. I think this is probably not a bad assumption that Germany will, that this is how it might be a good picture of how this could look going into 2030. Nemajin might have more experience than me on this or other views. I do think what has been an interesting question I saw from the audience is why at all? I mean, why are we building battery factories in Europe, and how are we going to compete to the Asians, and why is it competitive? I think the starting point for Freid was that this is going to be an industry that needs to become greener in itself. The footprint of a battery needs to be green in terms of climate emissions, and it also needs to be based in a very different way on production on renewables. It's a relatively energy intensive value chain, at least, and also on other social and environmental issues. Needs to be controlled in a different way, and hence our Freid's sort of strategy for that has been, and so is Europe's strategy, I guess, is to localize the value chain as much as possible to Europe, and that's what I heard Nemanja also talk about. Then we are helped by regulation. So seeing the battery passport coming into play and requirements through the battery regulation in the US is clearly impacting on even our battery cell production plans in the US, because we don't want to have a battery production necessarily in the US that cannot find its way back to Europe. So and for us as a company to have different standards would not make sense, and have battery passport on only the batteries that are produced in Europe doesn't make sense. So this will spread, and it will help, I think, raise the requirements and competitiveness of batteries produced in the West. And then it will cost, I'm sure. So and having said that, all the batteries that are produced in 2030 and are working and are safe will be sold, because the gap between demand and supply is going to be massive. So there is a need for every battery that we can produce. So we welcome all our competitors, because there's going to be more than enough for all of us.
Yeah, quick one on the graph. I guess Sweden is there because of Northvolt, and yeah, it seems that one company is carrying it mostly, but actually Hungary is bigger. The biggest one will still be Germany, but there's a lot of delays and a lot of announcements are much bigger than the actual, I think, in Germany. But there are many reasons, as you might see in the media. It's actually hard to do it, and especially with these energy prices, it's not very attractive. But anyway, it is still Germany, but I would say definitely number 2 is Hungary. Hungary created a great value chain, not only the Gigafactory, also about the supply chain. It's quite critical, and it's all in the area. So congratulations to the Hungarian, let's say, government. I don't know who was involved, but it was really nicely made. So definitely Germany, then Hungary, then probably everybody else. Sweden, I wouldn't put so high. I mean, it is Northvolt, of course, but it's actual capacity we're talking, not nominal. So that's on the part of the graph. So I wouldn't comment further. Let's go to the questions maybe.
Thank you, Nemanja. And perhaps we could hear your response then first, since Hege started touching on it already, on how can then the EU be competitive with the East without compromising its integrity, sustainability, etc., or on the contrary, based on new regulatory framework, how is the EU based gigafactories, how are they best fitted to be competitive? If you could say a word on that.
Quite a tricky one, and it's a large audience, so it has to be a broad answer. So apart from all this, like even we are more sustainable, all of us as Europeans, but this is all gonna last for a while. But we need to step up the game, and we need to find innovation in the process and the overall equipment efficiency to be on par. Because if we're on par or a few percent here and there will be room for all of us quite nicely. But if we cannot keep the gap just by saying we're going to be only more sustainable and everything else will figure it on its own. So definitely, we have to get our working hat and go there. And I'm not saying like Musk sleep in the factory, but be there and actually implement all the efficiency items you can do to actually get the cost level on a similar base. That's the fundamental. At the end, it's going to come down to that. But of course, we have an advantage in Europe that we can utilize the more sustainable landscape and actually be closer and be having the same mentality in Europe also helps a lot, because this is all development projects. You have to constantly talk to customers. You have to have good English. You have to have a certain understanding of the culture. It helps. It actually helps. We deal a lot with both East and West, and we're kind of somewhere in between. I mean, we're definitely in Europe, but in kind of mentality. So this is quite seen, and there are some challenges in the project's execution simply due to misunderstandings. So that all helps Europeans, and that's why I think there will be a nice flow for us to enter. But in 2030, it's quite critical to be also very cost effective.
Okay.
Could I just add, and I'd be curious to hear Nemanja's view on this. Actually, as of late, the competition for a battery producer in Europe, or somebody to establish a battery cell production in Europe, is going to come from the US, because the Inflation Reduction Act that was just put in place in the US is making our investors ask us why on earth we're going to build a factory in Europe when it is so beneficial financially to do it in the US. So this is going to be a really big challenge, I think, for the next months and years, maybe, for Europe.
Yeah,
Right.
there might be even some cancellations or some reduction of capacity due to this act. Okay, it's quite fresh, right? It's a few weeks old, this whole thing. I agree partially to that it will be definitely some shift, especially to the agnostic companies who don't care where the next capacity will be. But Europe will still buy in Europe. So don't expect that ESS might do both, because it's okay but cars which require just-in-time stuff, they are not going to depend on shipping batteries in containers for 6 weeks or 10 weeks. So this is something that has to be regulated in Europe, and Europe is in the middle of a crisis, we all know. Euro exchange rate is horrible. Most of the equipment and raw materials come from Asia. It's mostly calibrated to dollar, so we're losing on that front. We're losing on the energy price. We're losing on inflation. So if you add all that, you can simply mark up everything by 20% to be back in the game. So it's a serious issue of Europe, and Europe needs to regulate and cap this crazy situation, and also to motivate battery companies to expand further, because we had a huge bump in 18, 19, 20, and then suddenly it's becoming regular. Now suddenly US has a huge bump with the regulatory part. So I think Europe will respond, but some capacity will definitely be moved to US, especially for the agnostic companies.
Thank you so much. And now I will just ask Hege, 2 questions were asked directly to you on Freyr. So the first one was, who will be developing the cells at Freyr? Is this the US partner company with whom you have a joint venture? Same question goes for long term. And then the second question that I'll ask right away is also regarding energy densities, approximate range that Freyr is expecting to produce with its 24M semi-solid platform.
Okay. So thank you. Very quickly, I'm happy to answer those questions. So on the latter first, on cell level, we will have the same, and our LFP 24M based and battery cells have the same energy density as a conventional battery cell, but there is more energy carrying material in a 24M based, because there are less layers. So the thickness of the battery as such is of the materials is in per volume is higher, but on the cell level, more or less the same energy density as a conventional LFP battery. Our business model, and this comes back to being a startup and not having spent 10 years developing our own battery cell technology, we are licensing technologies. So our agreement with 24M in Boston is a license on their technology that we are going to build and scale, and we have then a license for certain areas and segments. And we are open for business for other types of technology as well, and are in several dialogues with technology owners of other types of battery cell technology, also including conventional. Our joint venture with Koch Strategic Platform is a pure production investment joint venture, which will help us scale in the US.
Thank you so much for that. So we have another question regarding cell manufacturing machines. And the question is to both of you, what about cell manufacturing machine suppliers who can build such a high level of machines as needed per the announced timeframe? And is that still Asia dependent? Any special strategy for machine suppliers that you'd like to comment on? Let's start with Nemanja.
Okay, just a quick one on the energy density before I answer this one. So we're also going to announce soon, but why not officially say it here? So we reached 190 watt-hours per kilogram on a cell level, and that's 440 on watt-hours per liter. And on a pack level, it's 150. And NMC is on the same level. So that's why it's actually going to be used in cars as well. But do you need for all applications that much? Probably not. Yeah, so I know the Freyr process or the 44M process is very, very suitable for ESS due to this 0.5 C. So how basically 2 hours charge and discharge, and it's pretty amazing. So, and when it comes to the equipment, well, let's be real. It comes from Asia. I mean, it does. So it's a lot of European companies are just starting to pick up speed and are making Asian partnerships. But China, Korea, Japan, that's it, South Korea. So those three countries are 90, probably 5% of the whole value chain. And Germany is picking up with some heavy industry, but it's going to take another few years before the experience is simply there to make a productive cell. And since we in Europe generally do not have cell making experience historically, we have to rely on our Asian partners, and hi to everybody, all of our Asian partners, who are helping us a lot with their support. And I think without them, this wouldn't be as easy. Well, it's not easy, but it will be definitely almost impossible to push through.
Thanks, Hege.
No, yeah, totally agree. And it's going to be an important thing to work on strategically. So we are forming strategic partnerships with framework agreements for several gigafactories with the biggest suppliers that we have qualified now for the pilot that we've already installed into the pilot factory. So working strategically and qualifying also machine manufacturers for this industry, and huge interest to partner with European producers to be able to establish manufacturing and production capacity, of course, in Europe and in the US together with us. So that's also part of, we will co-invest with our suppliers in that value chain as well.
Thank you both. As we get ready to close, we'd like now to ask for any kind of closing remarks on this important topic. Yes, and then we'll also remind everyone that we will have, because it was mentioned, a panel dedicated to the US policy side of things, including the Inflation Reduction Act. This will be the last panel of the day at 6:15 p.m. CT, so be sure to join us then. And now, if I may ask first Nemanja and then Hege to offer some closing remarks, and already our thanks for your time for today. Nemanja.
Yeah, so super exciting times. I mean, I was in a FMCG business for 10 years on a similar production kind of process, but completely different mindset. It was a stable business, which batteries will probably be in 20 years. But right now, it's simply so much is unexplored, and so many interesting people you meet every day to kind of collaborate on. So many innovations, a lot of startups, a lot of who would have known that the startup can make a gigafactory 10 years ago, right? So it's not software, right? It's actually stuff you carry. So and charge. So all of this makes me quite excited for the future, and all these challenges I mean, you're looking forward to them in a certain way. So I would definitely say to the audience, like, keep what you're doing. Since you're listening to us, you're probably interested in any value chain. Let us help you, let you help us, and let's build up strong European battery value chain.
Thank you.
Couldn't agree more. This is very much manifested in Norway, who is literally going from being an oil and gas and petroleum nation to really wanting to be in this green shift, and battery cell production based on our hydropower is it. And you know, in Freyr we have 3 strategic tenets, which are speed, scale, and sustainability. So this is all about, you know, we're absolutely out of time. So let's just go. And our boss says, you got to get up early in the morning to be part of this adventure. And we do. And then we need to think big. We need to scale this because the world needs these batteries to be able to transform the energy systems of the world. And then let's do it sustainable, both ourselves, but also in our value chain. This is an enormous opportunity for countries all over the world who have these minerals. But let's make sure that the people in these countries are not robbed from the value of those minerals, but that it's done in a proper way for their environments and their futures.
Fantastic. No, thank you so much, Nemanja and Hege, for this fantastic panel. I think there's a lot of appreciation also in the chat. And yeah, no, this was really, really great. And also maybe one big thanks, Nemanja, for your exclusive on your capacities. Well done. Congrats on that. Yeah. Oops, we forgot about it already. Maybe not. Maybe it's recorded. But if you get the recording, again, maybe just get the recording.
It's fine. It will be next week.
We'll be out soon, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Perfect. No, thanks so much, both. I think it was really, really insightful. And yeah, this is just a quick reminder now. We have a 10-minute networking break. So please go on the left side of your screen, click on people, and you meet some other fantastic battery enthusiasts attending this event from over 55 countries there. So with this, see you all in 10 minutes for our recycling panel. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Bye.